Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ed Stott and you're on That's Helpful. I am thrilled to have you here. If you're just joining us, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've joined us before and you're enjoying it, please do leave me a review wherever you're listening. It helps other people find our science-backed self-improvement club. Now, a good skincare routine can be a truly fantastic thing, but with so many products on the market making wild claims, it is incredibly hard to know where you should be focusing your time, not to mention your money. Fear not, though, Dr. Michelle Wong is here to help. You might know her as Lab Muffin Beauty Science on social media. If you do follow her on there, you know how incredible she is. I absolutely love seeing her pop up in my feed. She's been debunking the beauty industry online since 2011. She is a veteran of this. She's a cosmetic chemist by trade, and her latest book is called The Science of Beauty. We're going to work through some of the beauty myths and get what you really need to know about the products you use every day and what actually works. I love this, Michelle. Why did you start with this back in 2011? I know you have a background in chemistry, but why is it beauty in particular that captured your interest?
Honestly, it was because I was looking for beauty products for myself. So I was doing a PhD in chemistry at the time, specifically medicinal and supramolecular chemistry. So my brain was already all in. How do things interact with my body? Like, I've always been fascinated, like when you take like a painkiller, how does it know to get to your brain? The answer, by the way, is like it just goes everywhere and it happens to hit your brain. But like that's always fascinated me. And then I went online and I started looking up info on it because, I think a lot of women and men, of course, who are into skincare, we want to know what works and we want to know all the stuff behind it because that's how you work out what works. And that just wasn't online in 2011. I think the beauty industry has kind of traditionally assumed that women just don't really care about how the science works. At least it definitely was like that back then. So I went online, couldn't find much, and then started looking into it myself, found all this stuff, realized that other people must also be wondering this stuff and wouldn't have the resources to look for this or like the being blessed with an education to understand it. And chucked it all up on my blog, and that's where it all went.
It's so cool. Do you feel like, because to me, I don't know, I'm not like that good at my skincare routine. I know the basics, but I'm nowhere near you, Michelle. But it seems like to me now brands have really doubled down on specific active ingredients and they're pushing things that seem way more complicated than just the phrase like, which I hate, by the way, but just the phrase like anti-aging or like plumping or those kind of things. Like we're way more talking about specific ingredients and that kind of thing now. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a huge shift towards just more information, which is both good and bad, I guess. Like it's nice having more info, but like getting through the info is now really hard. But it's definitely changed a lot. And I think it's partly because of just the internet. Like back in the day, you would see like a one-page magazine ad or like an article, but now you can just find info. And I think brands are finally adapting to that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And in your book and obviously online, you really break it down in terms of what's actually going to work and what we should be looking for. But one of the things I guess we go on quite a bit is price. And I fall into this trap. I mean, I don't buy expensive face products, but if I were to, I would assume that my money would be well spent and I get better results. Is that always the case, that more expensive means more effective?
Unfortunately, no. And maybe fortunately for our wallets, but it does make it harder to work out what's going on. So there are so many factors that go into price. Like obviously there's stuff that will make the product work better ingredients, better technology to get those ingredients where they need to be into your skin, better packaging to protect the ingredients, more research and development to test it on actual people. But at the same time, there's tons of things that don't. So having a nicer glass, more luxurious packaging, commissions if it's sold through salons, for example, advertising, if there's like celebrity endorsements, there's so many things. And like also just psychology. So if there's a luxury brand, they're never going to price that product low because then you would assume it's cheap and crap. And then there are brands that will never price their products high because then their target audience would think it's a ripoff.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I guess we see these really expensive brands, and especially with the proliferation of social media now, you see it and you think, oh, that looks fancy. I mean, that's really great. But it's not always true. The other thing that we go off a lot is the kind of research claims that we see of packaging, people have seen a 70% marked improvement in their skincare quality, and like even on one tiny bit of packaging, there can be like 3 different or 5 different sets of claims about research that has been done to back up this product. Can we trust the research that companies are using to market these products?
Honestly, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to have that sort of research because a lot of the time, cosmetics can't make structure function claims. So, for example, they can't really claim that it increases collagen because that would make it a drug. They would have to go through all that drug regulation. So for cosmetics, usually it's more of an indirect claim. And then that just means it's really hard to tell if it's actually working or if it's just pretending to work. Like if it reduces the appearance of wrinkles, is it doing that by actually changing your skin or is it doing that by covering it up like foundation or highlighter? And so, having the claims, I think it's really good to pay attention to what the claims are saying. Like what exactly is it saying? If it's like, are people observing what's happening? And then also looking at whether the claims are for you. So who are making these claims? Like, is it 70% of women in your age bracket or is it 70% of teenagers, for example? Is it actually relevant? But I think these claims do give a good guide to what you should expect to see, like when you should expect to see results. Like if it's over 4 weeks, then don't toss out the product after a week because you're not seeing anything. If it says 4 weeks and you're not seeing anything after 4 months, then maybe that is not the product for you.
Yeah, interesting. Because I just assumed like those were all loads of BS. Like I just, I was just like, oh, I really don't think that they're in any way relevant. But it's interesting that we can tell some things from that research and that we shouldn't discard it completely. That's really interesting. And so you kind of touched on it there. I want to get into like how we can actually build a good skincare routine from the science. But if we are using a product and we've bought into it and we want to give it a test, how can we tell if it's actually working? Because damn, this is hard. I mean, it feels like it should be really obvious that you can, you should just see a huge difference. But sometimes then you're like, am I tricking myself? Or was that just good lighting? Like, how can we actually tell if it's working and how long should we be giving it to see if it works?
That's a really good question. And it's sort of why science was developed in the first place, because like we're so good at tricking ourselves. We can't remember things. Like you'll go back through your photos and you'll be like, I've never been to this restaurant. And then you've got a photo in there where you took the photo of yourself in there and you're like, oh. And like this happens so much with skincare. So I think photos is really good. Just having that photographic evidence, take a photo of yourself, hopefully try to get consistent lighting. So maybe take it at night in front of a mirror with like consistent lighting. Make sure it's the same angle. You're wearing similar colored clothes so that your camera doesn't like mess up. I think also if you can, it's always interesting to test it on half of your face because then at least you can compare it to the other half. Obviously, like a lot of the time we get too excited and we're like, I just want to put it all over my face and get beautiful skin. But that is really helpful. So maybe if you've tried it and you're not sure if it's working, maybe stop using it on half your face and see what happens and then put it back into your routine and see what happens.
That's clever.
And in terms of how long to wait, you can always, it really depends on what the product is. So if it's something that works pretty superficially, like cleansers, moisturizers, then probably like a week is enough. If it's something that works deeper, then usually that will take longer because like the changes that happen deeper in your skin, they take a longer time to show up on the surface of your skin. So for things like retinoids, it's usually recommended like months. About 3 months, you should see something, hopefully. After 6 months, like it's probably not working if it's not working by 6 months. But I think a lot of people are very quick to dismiss products without waiting enough. And retinoids and other sort of anti-aging, anti-wrinkle type products that work deeper in your skin, you definitely need to wait longer.
Yeah, that's such a great call. I love the idea of doing the pictures. I never even thought of that. It seems so simple, doesn't it? And then when you said it, I was like, oh, yeah, of course we can be doing that. I really like that. And also that's going to mean that you're not wasting your money on stuff that's not working. You know, you can actually remember, because that's the other thing, is that sometimes we'll try things, forget that we tried it, go back and try it again. Like, whereas if you've actually got a record, I love that. I think that's really helpful. So in terms of building our skincare routine, I guess the foundation, like you mentioned there, is the cleanser. How should we go about choosing the right one for our skin? Are there any particular ingredients that you look out for that kind of really work for everyone?
With cleansers, I think a lot of it is really about finding a gentle cleanser. I think a lot of people tend to just dismiss cleanser. They're like, oh, it's only on your skin for a few seconds. What sort of difference could it make? It can make a huge difference because cleansers have ingredients in them called surfactants. And these are the ingredients that actually take the oil off your skin and help it wash off in water, because oil usually doesn't dissolve in water. And these ingredients can actually disrupt your skin barrier, which means that everything else you're doing afterwards, you're kind of trying to fight your original cleanser, like your serum, your moisturizer.
Yeah, right.
All of that is trying to undo some of what the cleanser did. So yeah, gentle cleanser. Generally, there are a lot of very good cleansers at budget price points. So you don't need to go like super expensive for a good cleanser. What you're really looking for is you don't want your skin to feel tight afterwards. You want it to feel like you want it to be clean. So you can maybe get like a cotton pad and like swipe over your skin and see if you see any like foundation or any other residue on your skin. But it shouldn't feel tight afterwards, because that tight feeling is a sign that your barrier has got less oils. And also a lot of that tight feeling is from the proteins in your skin actually changing shape, which means that sometimes it's the surfactants staying on your skin for too long. And yeah. So that's really what you're looking for. In terms of ingredients, soap, like true soap, is usually not the best because it has a really high pH, whereas your skin has a low, more acidic pH. And that high pH tends to disrupt your skin. Soap also tends to be really skinny. Like the surfactants are really skinny and they can burrow in deeper into your skin and stay there. So I guess what you're looking for is not soap and not tight. So soaps, usually you'll see words like sodium, some sort of like vegetable name. It's kind of hard to find. I think I've got a list somewhere on my blog with them.
We might link to that. Yeah. That would be really, really helpful. Okay, interesting. And so what about, because like for years I had really bad acne, and one of the things that I used to do was like use something quite rough to wash my face with, in the idea that it would like exfoliate and get rid of all the crap. And there's so many things on the market now in terms of like washcloths, or even those like little rubber tools that you can use to clean your face. Are they ever a good idea? Is it a good idea to use something to use the cleanser with?
It's mostly just preference. If you like using a tool, then that can be helpful, but you definitely don't need to use a tool. If you're like thorough enough with your fingers, it will clean. If you do choose to use a tool, I recommend choosing something that's easy to clean, because having microbes sort of like proliferate and grow on that tool, when you put it back on your skin, that's all going back on your skin, and that's probably not going to be great for breakouts.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just sounds really gross when you say it. Should we be careful about the towel that we use to dry our face with too? Like, should we be using a different towel, do you think?
I think if you just change your towel regularly enough, it should be fine. Obviously, like don't not change it for 2 months. But I have seen some things online where people are like, you have to use a new one every time. I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I am changing my towel more than every 2 months. That's not why I asked the question. I've just seen it a lot online, like you said. And so what about a moisturizer? How essential is a moisturizer in our routine? And again, what should we be looking for?
This is like a bit of a controversial question, but I personally don't think it's essential for everyone. But I also think at the same time, a lot of people with oily skin who could benefit from a moisturizer aren't using one because they think their skin is oily, it's moisturizing itself enough. So the point of moisturizer is it adds oil and water back into your skin to give it like the right amount. Now, in theory, thanks to evolution, our skin does know how to produce enough oil and keep enough water in it. But in reality, there are so many things that can disrupt that. Like if you're using the wrong skincare products, if you're in like aircon with really dry weather, if you're getting a lot of sun exposure, all of that sort of thing can mess with your oil water balance. So if your skin is feeling tight, then try using it. If your skin is oily and feeling tight, look for a moisturizer that has less oils and more humectants, which are ingredients that hold onto water, and see what happens. Experiment with that, and you might find that your skin improves a whole bunch. My skin is super oily, or it used to be super oily, and I found that actually adding a moisturizer really helped that oil sort of stay under control.
Ooh, that's interesting. What are some examples of some of the humectants that we could be looking out for in the ingredient list?
I think the most common and nicely inexpensive one is glycerin. Glycerin is really great for skin. It actually hydrates in a way that a lot of other humectants don't. So there are little pores in our skin cells called aquaporins, and that's usually for water, but glycerin can actually go through that as well. So it can hydrate deeper than a lot of other moisturizers, which is really cool because it is so inexpensive. Another one is hyaluronic acid, which is quite trendy. A little bit more expensive, but there are some really nice budget products now. Some people find that it feels like it dries out their skin, but a lot of the time that's because they're trying to use it as like the only moisturizer. So it's not a well-rounded moisturizer. If you have dry skin, you probably also need some of those oils.
Yeah, so interesting. I've never even thought about it. I guess I just try loads of different moisturizers and then try and like run around the shower quick enough so that my dog doesn't lick it off me. I don't know if anybody else's dog does that or if it's just Pincho, but she is obsessed with trying to eat the moisturizer. And the other thing is, do we need to exfoliate?
I don't think anyone needs to do anything to their skin, honestly. Like, I feel like, I mean, you see guys who are like 60 and they're happy with how their skin looks. And for them, I think, skincare is a waste of money for them. It really depends on what you want. But I think a lot of people who want their skin to look nicer, exfoliation is a really nice, easy way to do that. Especially chemical exfoliants. If you use one just like once or twice a week, I think a lot of people will find that their skin just looks better because a lot of what you see is what's happening on the surface. And exfoliants are really good at smoothing out the surface and just making everything look kind of glossy and getting towards that sort of glass skin look.
What are some of the most effective chemical exfoliants that we can be on the lookout for?
Lactic acid is really great, glycolic acid as well. And if you have acne, salicylic acid is really handy.
Yeah, cool. Okay, they're great. I see them a lot in the chemist. I reckon I could work that out. And so one of my favorite topics, sunscreen. What should we be looking for in a sunscreen and when should we be wearing it?
So the biggest thing to look for is getting a sunscreen that you can apply a lot of regularly, happily. That's really what it comes down to. So it should feel nice enough that you'll apply lots of it. It should be budget friendly enough within your particular budget that you don't skimp on it, because the less you apply, the less like sunscreen molecules you have on your face to absorb the UV.
Yeah, because they're often in tiny tubes, aren't they? It really irks me. You pay like $50 and you get the tiniest tube. And if you're actually applying the amount that you need to apply, you go through it in like a week. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a big problem, I think. But there are quite a few that are quite budget friendly and also easily available. Like in Australia, I think the Aldi ones are really good. Like surprisingly good, and they are so budget friendly. Even like the Coles and Woolworths ones, the ones in the 1 liter jugs, those are surprisingly nice, especially compared to other countries. Like we are so lucky in Australia to have really decent sunscreens that feel a lot nicer than the sunscreens that we might remember from like 10 years ago. And they sit nicely on makeup.
Oh my God. I remember going to school like head to toe. Like we'd moved from England. I was 11 and my mum was paranoid about the skin. And we used to use this brand of sunscreen that she was like convinced was the best brand of sunscreen. And I would go in and I'd be white as a ghost, and which I'm already pale, but I'd be white as a ghost. And then it would run in your eyes as you sweat, and it would like sting in your eyes. So I'd just feel like tears streaming down my face, but my skin's great. So thank you, Mum. So the sunscreens, like just something that we can apply off often, really use a lot of. And so when should we be using it? All the time, or?
So there are actually some new guidelines that were put out by some researchers in Australia. So they're actually targeted for Australia, which is handy.
Brilliant.
And yeah, basically in general for paler skin, which is most of Australia, you should be applying whenever the UV index is forecast to be 3 or over. So that is most of the year for somewhere like Brisbane, less of the time if you're somewhere like Melbourne. But yeah, they've got these huge tables of what you need and how to balance like vitamin D versus skin cancer risk, which is really cool. And they've introduced new ones for darker skin as well, because obviously darker skin, that melanin does have some protective effect. And in general, it's harder to get enough vitamin D. So there's a whole bunch of nice guidelines. But yeah, general rule, check the UV index.
Interesting. And so there's also this idea that potentially we should even be wearing sunscreen when we're indoors. What do you think about that?
It really depends on how far you are from the window and how much light is coming through. So I think in general, if you are very close to a window, like a meter away, and if there is light literally coming through the window and hitting you, then sunscreen is a really good idea. If you're a few meters back, then the light will actually decrease exponentially. So like just moving your desk might be a good idea if you can. But like if you imagine in terms of being in a car, for example, basically the amount of light you're getting, if it's not striking you directly, is proportional to how much sky you can see. So that's why moving away from the window, like your sky amount, like gets exponentially less, is so handy for reducing sun exposure. But in a car, you've got sky everywhere, which is why the risk is much higher. So there is this really famous photo of a truck driver. Can't remember how long he drove a truck for. It would have been decades. And half his face is really wrinkly because the sun was hitting him, and the other half looks really nice. But you can imagine like half his face is kind of indoors with sun hitting him. Half his face is indoors with lots of light, but not much sun hitting him. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of what the difference can be indoors.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How interesting. And how often should we reapply?
In general, it's every 2 hours. So it's because your skin is sweating, it's putting out oil, it's breaking up that layer. It's like foundation. Like you can see your foundation clump up over time, and sunscreen is essentially doing the same thing on your skin. So yeah, every 2 hours. And also if you're doing a lot of activity, if you're sweating, if you're swimming, in which case you should be using a water-resistant sunscreen as well. If you're toweling off, then you should reapply right afterwards.
And how about the way that we apply it, like in terms of, there's a lot of spray sunscreens available now. Are they good for that reapplication stage?
It really depends. So the biggest risk with sprays is as you're spraying it, if there's like any amount of wind, the droplets just fly away. They don't land on your skin. And if you look at how much sunscreen is like actually inside a spray, if you like try to see like spray it into like a shot glass or something and see how many sprays you need, it's usually a lot more than you expect. So it can be a bit risky, but it is very convenient. So usually the recommendation is just apply way more than you think you need, and it's probably fine.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's really interesting. And so if we are using a sunscreen that, if we're using a makeup that already has SPF in it, do we need to wear sunscreen as well?
Generally, yes. So again, it's about the amount. So the amount of sunscreen you need on your face to get the labeled SPF is about a quarter teaspoon. The amount you need on your whole body is about a shot glass. If you apply about half of that, then you're going to get about half of the labeled SPF. So if you've got like SPF 50, it'll go down to SPF 25 if you apply an eighth of a teaspoon. Now, if you look at how much that is, like if you actually measure out how much foundation you're applying, you're probably applying like a quarter of that. So if your foundation has SPF 15, which is really common, you're actually getting a quarter of 15, which is like a bit less than SPF 4, which is probably not enough if it's reasonably sunny. So yeah, that's a big reason why you should be looking for a sunscreen or an SPF moisturizer. There are some tinted moisturizers where you can apply that much and you don't look like you're completely cake-faced. But yeah, the cake face is the biggest issue.
Yeah, so interesting. And are there other things that we can be doing as well as sunscreen to protect ourselves from the sun?
Yeah. So for Australians, you probably know slip, slop, slap, seek, slide. So slip on a shirt. So protective clothing is really good, especially because you don't need to reapply it. So I love using a rash vest. And there are some really nice looking ones now that don't look terrible and like fluoro. So those are great for swimming. It's like you don't have to worry about getting it on your back, which is great. Slop on sunscreen, which obviously, slap on a hat. So a hat with a bigger brim, and especially if it droops down a bit. Again, it's about how much sky you can see. So you can imagine like if you have a broader brim that blocks out more of the sky, you're going to get less sun on your face. Sunglasses, great for cataracts and also great for wrinkles around your eyes and also for that problem with sunscreen going into your eyes and hurting. That's a good way of getting around that. And what is the last one? Shade. Yeah, shade is really useful. It's a really good idea. I've seen a lot of those tents on beaches now, and that's just so much easier. But yeah, having lots of layers is great because, you know, if your sunscreen starts bunching up and you forget to reapply, if you have like holes in your clothing, if the clothing's like stretching over like your elbow or something and more light is getting through, having lots of layers is a good way of making sure you're covering your bases.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with a big hat. If anybody's been walking with me, they know I look a bit embarrassing when I go walking. I bought this brilliant one from Solbari. It's so wide. Yeah, it's so great. It's like really wide at the front. It goes down the back. I put it on and I showed my husband and he absolutely laughed out loud for me. And that was how I knew I had enough sun protection. I'm also a big fan of an umbrella sometimes. Like if you're going out walking in the day, it's so easy and it's so not hot. And if you're wearing your hair up and you don't want to wear a hat, I love carrying an umbrella. Is that a good solution too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So again, it's like the whole sky thing. So
sky thing. Yeah.
The higher it is. So beach umbrellas, if it's like a little beach umbrella and it's really high and you're on the sand, then you're not getting that much protection. But if you're walking with one, if you're bringing it down near your head, then really good protection.
Oh, great. Love it. Amazing. And so there's obviously so many things that we can do, like applying to our skin, like the sunscreen and the actives and that kind of thing. But in terms of lifestyle, there are other things we can be doing too. How important is is sleep to our skin? And should we be also thinking about the certain products we apply when we sleep?
Yeah, so with sleep, a lot of it is just your skin is part of your body and your whole body benefits from getting all those boring things that doctors keep telling us to do that we're just like, oh, do I need to? Can I just like take a pill? But yeah, just adequate sleep, balanced diet, exercise, it's so hard now, but less stress, try to avoid screens before you go to sleep, avoid stimulation. All of that stuff is great for your whole body, including your skin. In terms of sleep products specifically, when you go to sleep, your skin does get a little bit more permeable. So your skin is more likely to dry out. So if your skin is dry in the first place, if it's dry weather, if you've got aircon, then it's a really good idea to make sure you moisturize your skin before going to bed. Plus, because it's a bit more permeable, actives tend to work a bit better at night.
What about skin supplements? You mentioned diet there, things like collagen, and there's lots of like beauty blends in terms of if you go to the supplement aisle in the pharmacy. Do skin supplements work? Should we be paying attention to them?
They work to some extent, but I think for me, I would put it quite far down the list in terms of like cost-benefit ratio for most people.
They're so expensive.
They are, especially. So the one that seems to have a decent amount of evidence is probably collagen. So those collagen supplements do work, but I mean, like you said, they are very expensive. I think if you calculate it, it's a few dollars a day. If you compare that to sunscreen, tretinoin, retinoids, all of those things, they're a lot cheaper and they seem to work better. So, and there's a lot more evidence behind them. A lot of the evidence for the supplements, like I think they work to some extent, but a lot of these are funded by supplement companies, sometimes in collaboration with independent researchers, which is why I still think they probably work, but it's a lot harder to tell like how well they work because you would expect that to be a bit inflated at least. So yeah, cost benefit. I think if you're doing all of those things already and you have extra money to splash around, then I think collagen supplements is probably a good idea. Definitely check if they have any contaminants. So try to look for a company that is a bit more reliable, because supplement regulation is not very good. There's always like stories about people finding contaminants in them. It's a big problem. But yeah, I think that's probably the next place to go. There's a bit on things like omega-3s, especially for things like eczema. The research, again, is just very, very all over the place. It's really hard to tell whether or not it works well. I think usually for things like omega-3s and fish oils, if you're taking them for a different reason other than skin, then that might be worth it. But just for skin, I'm not super convinced by the evidence. There is also like some sunscreen supplements. So there seem to be things like antioxidants. There's a fern extract that seems to give extra UV protection. I think the fern extract might be worth it if you're super, super sun sensitive. So the biggest one is it's like polypodium extract. I can't remember the brand name, but that might be good if you have a tendency for skin cancer. Also, there's some research on niacinamide, so B3 for skin cancer prevention. It's only really tested in like high risk people, like if you've got a family history. So talk to your doctor about that. But yeah, otherwise, like a healthy diet should have lots of antioxidants, and those will help protect your skin a bit against UV.
Interesting. That is super helpful. But I guess the TLDR is if you're going out and not wearing sunscreen, don't bother with the collagen
Exactly.
supplements. It's not going to help. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, interesting. And so there's a few other things that you work through in the book that I thought were really interesting. Like, how can you fade scars? What's the best way to go about them?
The best way is probably prevention. So trying to make sure that your wound heals nicely. So for things like surgical scars, there are products, there are scar gels and stuff that you can use to try to make the scar heal nicely in the first place, and doing things like don't pick at your stitches, which I have done. It's very tempting and very easy. But yeah, like listen to your doctor when they tell you, don't pick your stitches, come back to me after this many days. Protect it from the sun with the bandage, because the sun can darken scars and like change how it heals.
Interesting.
Yeah, but other than that, a lot of it is quite deep down. So if the silicone sheets and gels aren't working, then it is probably time to go see someone who can deal with the scars, like go to a skin clinic, and they can do things like subcision and laser treatments that can help fade them. And if they are just brown scars, you can use the pigment treatment products. So things like retinoids, chemical exfoliants, vitamin C, those will, hydroquinone as well, those will all help fade pigment.
And is there anything we can do about stretch marks?
Yeah, with stretch marks, I have mixed feelings about the whole like anti-stretch mark thing, because about 90% of women have it. It's literally just a feature of our anatomy at this point. It's just who we are. It's how our bodies grow, how our bodies like serve us, really.
Totally.
So I think I'm a big fan of like accepting stretch marks, but if you do feel quite paranoid about them, if you feel very self-conscious, then there are things you can do. So the biggest thing is probably massage, the biggest, safest thing. So if you're pregnant, for example, then just massaging the area can help it reduce. So the reason you get stretch marks is it's a combination of things, including inflammation and just like the physical stretching, which is why with things like pregnancy and like if you're bulking up with muscles, if you're hitting the gym a lot, sometimes you'll see stretch marks pop up. But yeah, massaging seems to help because it just like evens out the tension in different ways. There are also a few things like if they're red, then retinoids seem to help, and also laser treatments. But yeah, usually it's best to deal with them when they're still red or colored. When they fade to white, usually it's a lot harder to deal with.
Interesting. Well, that's really helpful. But yeah, I totally agree that, they are just a normal part of a human body. But I do understand that if you're self-conscious of them, that's great to know that there are some options. So to wrap up, if you could only really include like 3 things in your skincare routine, what would make your list of like the top 3 essential things you'd have in there?
I mean, okay, sunscreen, obviously, we're Australian, it's prevention is better than trying to reverse the damage, and cheaper, so much cheaper than trying to reverse it afterwards. Second thing, I mean, you have to have a cleanser if you have a sunscreen. I don't know. I love the feeling of a clean face. So my favorite type of cleanser is a cleansing balm, because like when I'm wearing foundation and I rub the cleansing balm on and then go into the shower and wash it off, I just feel it's just really relaxing. Like that
good.
massage.
Yeah.
Love it. And then I guess it has to be, I think it's got to be a retinoid. Retinoids do so much. They're kind of like a jack of all trades. They help with don't love the word anti-aging, but that is the word that is used in the literature a lot. So it helps reduce wrinkles. It helps reduce pigment, which is how non-white skin tends to age. We tend to just get uneven pigment and age spots. So helps a lot with that. It also helps with acne. So really does everything.
Wow. Okay, I see why it's made it into your top list. I forgot to ask you about wrinkles and that kind of thing. When we are sleeping, I've heard loads of people say, "Oh, you should sleep on your back because you don't want to like lie on your face in a certain way night after night after night and make those marks in your face." Is that a true thing? Should we be conscious of that, or is that just something I've read on the internet?
It is a true thing. Like we spend about a third of our life sleeping, and our heads are, I can't remember, like 10% of our body weight or something. It's heavy.
Wow.
We got heavy heads. And that's just squishing. So if you're sleeping on your face, especially, you are squishing. And there are studies that have shown that, like, if you look at some people, they've got marks that don't line up with how their expressions show up. So a lot of the time, how wrinkles form is your skin kind of thins as it ages. It's sort of like leather. Like if you have a leather wallet, if you bend it back and forth a whole bunch at a particular point, you end up with a wrinkle. And if you're not keeping the leather in good condition, it wrinkles faster. Same idea with skin. Our skin condition, it gets worse with age. And then if you're wrinkling, that's where your wrinkle will go. So yeah, squishing your face into the pillow sometimes causes these vertical marks called sleep wrinkles. And this isn't just like the fold that, you know, you wake up with and it disappears. It's over time, it etches in. But at the same time, if you find it really uncomfortable to sleep on your back, then that's also not going to be great, because again, sleep is super important for our bodies, all of those repair and renewal processes. So it's really a balance. So if you find it easy to sleep on your back, amazing. If you find it difficult to sleep on your back and you just cannot sleep without smushing your face into a pillow, then it probably isn't worth it, especially if you have things like sleep apnea, which get worse on your back. Then yeah, it's really a balance.
Interesting. What about things like these silk pillowcases and that kind of thing?
I don't think they help that much for wrinkles. It does help a bit because it is like, it reduces the friction. So if your pillowcase is just smushing your skin in a weird way, then that might make the sleep wrinkles worse. But a lot of it is just weight. But I have found that silk pillowcases are great for my hair. So if you go to sleep, I've got like super bleached hair because it was worth it. I'm happy with the damage because I like the color. But yeah, if you're smushing your hair into a pillow and it's rough, that's probably going to cause quite a bit of hair damage. That's probably a bigger consideration, I think, than skin.
Yeah, interesting. And so if you could only have like 3 active ingredients in your routine, what are your top 3 active ingredients?
Retinoids has to be number 1. Number 2, I don't know. It gets a bit more difficult down here. So I like vitamin C, but at the same time, it is really annoying.
Why?
So vitamin C is unstable. So it breaks down pretty quickly. So you have to kind of monitor your product and like buy the right products. It also tends to stain your skin. It actually breaks down and turns into a fake dye molecule, which is really interesting. So yeah, if you've ever used a vitamin C serum and your fingers are looking kind of like a bit too reddish orange, that's actually what's happening. It's not because it's damaging your skin. It's just dyeing your skin slightly. I like it, but it's a bit of a pain. And third one, I think it has to be chemical exfoliants. I really like what they do with my skin. So yeah, lactic acid, I would say.
And in terms of the chemical exfoliants, is there like a certain percentage we should be looking for? Because it ranges from like 1 all the way up to like 15%. And I'm like, well, which ones do I need? Like, which ones are working? Like, is there a certain percentage that would work the best for most of us?
I think a good starting point is probably somewhere around 5 to 10% of a glycolic acid. For salicylic acid, probably 1 to 2%. And then you can go up or down depending on how your skin reacts. Everyone's skin is different. My skin is super tolerant of chemical exfoliants, super intolerant of retinoids. So depending on your skin, like I think the key thing with skincare is really learning how to listen to your skin. If your skin hurts, if it's red, if it's peeling, then that is a sign to pull back. I know a lot of us who grew up in like the early 2000s have kind of learned that like attacking your skin is great. Like,
if it's burning, it's working. Yeah.
We need to unlearn that.
Yeah, it's true. There's so much from the early 2000s that we need to unlearn. That's definitely one of them, 100%. And that is so interesting. If we only take one thing away from our conversation that's really going to upgrade our skincare routine, Michelle, what's the one thing you want people to take away?
Oh, one thing. Can I have 3?
You can have 3. You can have 3.
For 3, firstly, wear sunscreen. Because if you don't wear sunscreen, if you use like any sort of anti-wrinkle, anti-pigment, anti-aging, anti-acne product, it's not going to work as well. You need to protect your skin from UV. UV is terrible. Number 2, I think listen to your skin is a really big one. Just learn to understand how your skin reacts to things, what the warning signs are before you completely mess up your skin for the next 3 weeks. Listening to your skin and just checking if products are working or not. It's going to save you so much time and money and hassle. So keep a skin diary. Take photos of your skin. Don't add all the products in at once. Add one thing at a time slowly and see how your skin reacts. That's way better than getting swept up in hype and buying a whole bunch of products that don't work for your skin. Like you're buying them because you saw someone with completely different skin and they looked really good. I mean, I've been swept up by this all the time in the past, but it's something we need to unlearn. And then also just keep it simple. I think a lot of the time people are using way too many products. They're getting swept up in the hype. Every once in a while, I think it's a really good idea to just completely cut back on your products, simplify your skincare routine, and then add things back in one at a time to see what's really working and what you don't have to use and what you don't have to rebuy.
That is such a good tip. I'm so glad you had 3. Well done. Michelle, this has been such a joy to chat. I have learned so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you sparing me the time.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Michelle Wong is a cosmetic chemist and you can find her on social media. I follow her on Instagram. She's on TikTok. She's everywhere as Lab Muffin Beauty Science. And her latest book is called The Science of Beauty. I'm going to put a link to it and where you can find Michelle in the show notes because there's so much more to this. And I think it's really great to have somebody that you can genuinely trust when it comes to beauty and these products and debunking these myths. Because as I said, it's not just crazy the amount of money you can waste doing this, but you can actually cause some quite bad damage to your skin, which I have done in the past. So definitely go and check out Michelle's work. I'm so grateful to you for joining me. Thank you so much. I really hope you're enjoying these conversations. If you are, please leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm Ed Stott and I sincerely hope that's helpful.